Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we're continuing on the panel alignment on the Alfarrari. Alright, so those of you who were watching last week will have seen that I got the rear window into the car and got it reasonably well lined up. One of the main issues is, without actually fully fitting it, it's hard to know the right location, and I was talking to Tim about it, and he had a better method than this one for getting the window in the right spot. What he actually did is he's taken the old window rubbers and he's actually cut them into short lengths, and he's actually cut the top part that grips onto the window out, so we can clip these on all the way around the window, and they have a step in it so that we know when these are clipped on, and I can sit the window on top of all of these and know if it's going to sit in the right spot. So I'm going to take this rubber off now, fit a bunch of these, and just see how close I really was. So you can see here I went around, and the fitment is actually quite good. It all lines up quite nicely. It does sit a little bit, it does tilt a little bit at the top, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the weight is all going on the bottom at this stage with only a couple of spots of rubber, so it's getting compressed more than the full rubber would, and it does seem to like it a little bit more if I jack up that bottom section, but it's pretty good. So at this stage, I'm happy with the window fitment. Let's move on back over this side to the B-pillar. All right, so those of you who were watching previously will have seen this B-pillar is not in good condition right underneath here. This is actually not connected at all. It's completely rusted through, and this door doesn't line up very well at this stage. And to be able to get this door to line up properly, I really need to replace that B-pillar and get that B-pillar solid, so then we can move forward on aligning this whole side. So what I'll do now is I'll just quickly take this panel off and show you what we were dealing with. So those who missed it previously, you can see here that this whole section here should be one piece. It shouldn't be cut through the middle all the way along this vertical edge here. It's also been cut here and just bodged together. It's quite nasty and not the way it's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I actually went to Tim to see if he had something, and he actually had an old quarter panel lying around. I'll just show you. So unfortunately, Classic Alpha doesn't make a reproduction panel of this. So thankfully, Tim had this lying around, and this is obviously an entire rear quarter panel, and it has the B-pillar intact. So what I need to do is I need to remove this B-pillar from here first, and then see if we can graft this into the car. All right, so I've pulled this all apart again, and this is all sort of bare now, and I have my B-pillar out. So it's got a bit of light surface rust and stuff on it. So I'm just going to take it now over to the sandblasting booth, chuck it in, and just get rid of some of this surface rust, make it nice and pretty before I put it back in the car. So I've cleaned up this panel. It's looking much nicer now. I'm just lining it up and having a look where I need to cut out this panel, and there's going to be a bit of a gap at the bottom where this panel stops, and where this lower panel that has to go on right down, sort of wrap underneath, joins up. There's going to be a bit of a gap, so I'm going to have to reuse bits of this existing panel. I've also noticed that this is obviously, like, because this is a later car, this inner B-pillar is very slightly different to this one. Looks like there's some other panel or piece or something that went on here before. Either way, I'm not too concerned with that at this stage. It's just a matter of getting a whole bunch of measurements from the inside, lining up these holes, using my other side as reference, and then I'm going to have to cut this out and try and fit this into place and get it so that it fits perfectly and it's the right bit for the car. All right, I've been really taking my time, gradually cutting and grinding and fitting and measuring. I'm sort of cutting across the other side because the other side seems to be all in reasonably original condition that doesn't seem to have been buckled or messed with, whereas this side was just a complete schmozzle. So I'm spending the time to get everything lined up on this panel. It's just clamped in here at the moment, but I might actually start tacking it in and going through and just making sure that everything is in the right spot. Tack it in, measure it, and then I can hopefully weld it. Okay, so this is far from perfect, but my TIG welding is looking much tidier. It really helps when you turn down the machine. So I've turned it down to 35 amps. I think it was up at like 65 before, and I was trying to use the pedal. Much easier to set the machine. And yeah, so I've got this all tacked in. Some of that was quite ugly, but the piece is tacked in and it all seems to be lining up nicely. So I'm going to go through now and finish tigging it all up. All right, that's quite an ugly weld, but the practice is getting there. I think I had the temperature down a little bit too low on that, but it's penetrated well. It's good. It's just not pretty. Now my next step is to go in and mount this lower panel onto the car. So this lower panel here, you can see I've already lined it up. I've already scored the panel, so I'm going to cut that off, and then hopefully I should be able to put this onto the car as well, and we should be looking good. So you might have seen there, I actually quickly put the rear quarter panel back on and everything seems to be lining up much better now. I actually have the B-pillar correct. I'm also lining this up with the other side, and I took some measurements down at Tim's off of a nice known straight car so that I can get this triangulated and get everything in the right spot so that when I put this all together, it's all nice and straight and square. The next thing I'm going to do is I've got to put this lower panel on, the lower B-pillar replacement panel from Classic Alpha that I got. To actually mount this on the car, normally it's spot welded on. I don't have a spot welder, and I was looking at there was a couple of other panels, I can't remember what it was, that I was drilling out all the holes in the drill press, and it's a real pain to go through and do that. I had a look around on Amazon and I found this. This is a joggler air punch. It's got sort of two functions. When you, it's an air-powered tool. It will crimp a step into a panel with the top section, and this bottom section here, you can punch the holes in. So you can actually take two flat sheets and put a step in it so that one will sit down underneath the other and punch holes in the top bit, and then you can go through and MIG weld into each hole. Nice and quick and simple. So I'm going to give it a go now and see how it works. So you can see here I just used a piece of scrap metal. You can see it put a step in the panel there, and it's just the perfect size to lay another panel over the top and then MIG weld them together, and you get a nice lap weld. So that is quite a handy tool, and it's going to make things like punching out the holes for this replacement panel much easier. I can just connect this up and just go around the edge. It's not an expensive tool. I'll put a link in the description to it, but I think this is going to be quite handy for all of these panels moving forward. It's amazing how much better the panel gaps get when you actually have a panel that's properly measured and properly placed in there. This is all lining up, this whole door, everything is lining up so much better than it did before. It's actually clipped into the B-pillar. This panel here is loose. I have to trim out the top to actually get it to sit flat, but it's sitting nice and level all the way along down the bottom now, and it seems like it's going to have a good, I can see that I can actually adjust it and get good panel gaps now, whereas last week with the old pillar, I was really struggling to get anywhere. So let's trim this up and we'll just start lining things up a little bit more. But I think we've got the B-pillar in the right spot and it's looking good, finally. Well, that is sitting a whole lot better. It still needs a lot of adjustment. This door is still sitting a little bit high on this end, and the panel gap's a little bit too close, but there's a bit of room for movement to move this panel back, and this is just a quick, loose fitment, and it's looking pretty good. I am happy so far. Okay, so I put it all apart. This piece was just tacked in just so that I could make sure that the everything still went back on and everything was in the right spot. Now I'm happy with it. I did forget to paint in behind it. The back of the panel is painted and rust prevented, but I just need to, now I've still got this hole in here, I need to spray down in here and make sure that's all rust treated. And then I need to start looking at where I'm going to sit this pillar and filling in this section. But before I can fill this section in, I need to make sure that the pillar is perfectly vertical and in the exact right spot, square with the other side. I went over to Tim's and took some dimensions from a good known car that is known to be straight, that he's restored. So I'm going to match the measurements up to this and make sure I get this all in the right spot. And then we might do some reinforcing that you guys have all been talking about. I am finally doing some bracing. One of the other reasons I didn't do bracing is because nothing was square and straight up on top here anyway. This pillar wasn't even connected to anything, like it's sort of just floating. So now with the measurements that I had off of that known good car, what I'm actually doing is I'm going to weld in a X brace in here. So you can see this bar that I just got sitting in here. I'm going to weld this in on a diagonal here and weld another one in over to the other side so that I've got a nice solid square base and hold the pillar in the correct spot so that everything is absolutely perfect. So I've been measuring up, doing most of this episode has been lots of time just tweaking and measuring the whole time, but I'm pretty confident now that I've got what I want, so I'm going to just tack this piece into place. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got my cross braces in. I've just chucked a little piece of scrap in the middle and just tacked it together. It's all pretty rough, but the measurements are all perfect. So this I tacked a little bit lower, just so I've got enough room to do my patch repair in here. But now we have a cross brace chassis, so maybe some people might be a bit happier with me. But I'm confident the chassis is nice and straight and square. This is more about keeping the B-pillars in line so I can do my B-pillar repairs, and it's all going to line up nicely. Okay, so now this is all secure. The cross brace is in and this is all not moving anywhere. It's exactly where it needs to be. The measurements are all really good. I've double checked, so I'm happy with that. So now it's time to go through and weld up this lower panel here. All right, so I've gone through now. This has all been welded on. This panel is all nice and secure. I did punch a couple of extra holes that I ended up not needing because I didn't really look at where this was welding on before. But it's all looking pretty good. This is not completely perfect. There'll be a couple of little spots of filler that's needed in here just to tidy up those welds. It was quite difficult getting it all in place and there was a big gaps and I had to MIG it all, not TIG it. So quite neat and tidy. So the last piece I've got is this piece here. Obviously there's a gap here. Because this panel, this was as long as the B-pillar as what I received from Tim, and this is the replacement panel from Classic Alpha, they don't quite join up in this case, so I need to fabricate this myself. So I'm just going to get out a bit of sheet metal and bend it up on the folder, and we should be able to replicate that pretty easily. Well, that is a lot of fiddly work, but I actually have the B-pillar in. I still need to go back and do a bit of moving around and just tweaking bits and pieces, but that is definitely all the time I have today. So that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 1935, with the threat of the new German race cars looming from Mercedes and Auto Union, Alfa Romeo and their racing director Enzo Ferrari decided to do something a little different. The 16C Bimatore was a race car built with a supercharged straight 8 engine from the 8C. Had one of the engines in the front of the car and another one behind the driver. The total power was 540 horsepower, and getting this power to the ground was via a centre-mounted gearbox with 2 input shafts coming from either side. It also had 2 output shafts, each going to one of the 2 rear wheels. As you can imagine, with 2 engines, it was extremely heavy, and though it had amazing straight line speed, it did not corner well, and it also chewed through tyres. It also suffered from longer pit times and ultimately was not successful as a Grand Prix car. It did set a new top speed record though, from Florence to Livorno, with a top speed of 364 kilometres an hour with an average of 323 kilometres an hour. Famously, it was also the very first car to wear the Scuderia Ferrari prancing horse on its flanks.
All right, right, I was quite happy with how the progress went this week. We've got the B-pillar in, and I really learnt a lot about TIG welding, and I'm really loving the TIG weld. It's nice, much softer welds, and seeing as now I've actually turned my power level down, I'm actually like much more successful with my TIG welding. I've got quite a few tips from Trev's blog. You guys should go and check out his channel. Very, very helpful.
So slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely, it's very slow, but it's going to be. And I'm happy. I really enjoy this part of it, the actual fabrication part, and the this is the fun stuff. So it's slow, but it's rewarding.
That's good. That's great. Good. Okay, I hope you're enjoying it. And if you haven't already, check out our video when Jeff did a thing about how much a mid-level YouTuber makes. It's not what people think.
Yes, a lot of people think that we're like,
balling, but no.
It's not the case.
Anyway.
So go and help out the channels you enjoy, like Urgefab. All right, that's it for this week. Go and see, join us on Patreon. You can help us out. You really help out keeping these builds moving forward. And you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram.
I know.
Mrs. Jeff is
I think I put so much mental energy into that last fun facts that I'm still coming down from the Scuderia Ferrari prancing horse on its flanks. Okay.
All right, guys.
Oh, and you're going to do a shout out to
yes,
Alyssa's boyfriend.
Quick shout out to Alyssa's boyfriend, David. Happy birthday. All right, guys. Bye.
My brain's just not in the right space tonight. Alfarrari and their director, what?
Alfa Romeo, not Alfa Ferrari.
Alfa Romeo. Oh, it's Alfarrari. So you said for Union. Alfarrari. Again, stop saying that.